Hello, my loves, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Gabriela Pimienta, and I'm the broker of Pimienta Realty. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys how to do an as-is contract for a single-family home when representing a buyer in a community without an association. So, let's get started. The first thing that you want to do is be logged into your MLS. We're working with the Matrix MLS system. I am currently an associate of the Miami Association of Realtors, so I belong to that board, and I log in through the Miami Association of Realtors website. There is a video where I have done the instructions on how to log into the MLS when you are a board member for the Miami Association of Realtors, and I will link that video down below. For the time being, we're going to get right into our example. Let's begin with searching for our property. In this case, we're going to go to search. We're going to go to the single family condo search. Then we are going to type in our address. This case, we're working with the address that is 3341 Northwest 6th Street, but we're just going to insert these numbers. The next thing that we're going to do, you're going to notice there says one match. Then we're going to hit results. And we're going to get another window. We are going to click right here. And we're going to see our full view of the property we're interested in submitting an offer for. A few things I want you guys to notice. So the first thing that we're going to see is that the price is $240,000 and that this property was built in 1958. There is a rule that says that we must include a lead-based paint addendum for properties that were built before 1978. I could be wrong, it might be 1976, but I'm almost sure it's 1978. In which case, any property that's built before 1978, you would have to, or 76, I'll confirm that later, you're going to have to create a lead-based paint addendum, and we're going to get into that further into the video. For purposes of this example, we're going to move on to our next step. The next step that we want to take a look at is we want to go to the little world sign. That is called imap. We want to make sure that that opens in a new tab if you're working on a Mac. And if you're working on a PC, I think you would just click on it and it would take you to the next step. We want to click on the imap tab that just opened. And in my case, it's asking me to re-log in, which I will go ahead and do so. And this would be part of how you log into the MLS system. It's just making me do it again, so we'll do it again. And right here, it's going to pull up your imap page with property tax information. In the previous video that I did a video showing you guys how to do comparables in an area when you want to know how much prices of houses are going for. It's exactly the same way. In this case, we're just trying to find owner information. Why are we trying to find owner information? The reason why we're looking for owner information is because when we're writing out a contract, we want to make sure that we are putting the correct legal individuals on the contract for signature. You don't want to leave anybody out. I can give you an example. There could be a husband and wife that are trying to sell a house. You meet with the husband, you get the listing agreement with the husband and the wife signing, everything great. From the time that you met with the husband and wife to the time that you received an offer, that you're going to write an offer for a buyer, they had some type of dispute and the wife no longer wants to sell. But you go back to the house and the husband signs and you think everything is fine. Guess what? You didn't get consent from the wife. She didn't legally sign the contract and you legally don't have a binding contract. So that is in the example when you're representing a seller and a buyer. However, when you're representing a buyer and you're writing the contract, you want to make sure that the seller information is on there correctly because you need every party to the transaction to initial and sign the contract. If not, you do not have a binding contract. So that's why we come to the property records website and we verify who that owner is so that we can have our contract in order. So in this case, you're going to see here that it says Krika LLC. And that's all we need for purposes of this example. Here is the property address. That's all wonderful. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go back to our MLS. We're going to click on Form Simplicity, which in our example is FS. We're going to make sure that opens in a new tab as well. And we're going to go there. You just click Send. It's going to take you here. I like to go to blank forms. Under blank forms, we're going to type as is. And you're going to see right here, the very first one says as is, contract for sale and purchase. We're going to click on that. Here we're going to start with who are the sellers. And where do we get that from? From our property appraiser's office tax records. We're going to go over here and we're going to copy. And we are going to paste it right here where it says seller. My buyer's name is James Jones. And you will want to make sure that this is correct. Check on the pre-qualification letter or ask your client for a picture ID so things can be done according to their legal name. We don't want any issues with a contract with them saying it wasn't me, I didn't sign it, and all these things that can occur. So make sure you have everybody's spelling of their legal name correct. We're going to move on to the next step, which is going to be city, zip code, street address, in other words, the property address. So we're going to go back to imap, and we're going to simply copy and paste our address. The property is located in Broward County. You want to make sure that you put in the county correctly. We're going to go back to imap and we're going to copy and paste our property ID for tax purposes, and that's what you're going to place right here. Legal description, we're going to go back to imap and we're simply going to copy and paste what the legal description is. And this is all very self-explanatory because everything is labeled in dark bold letters. So we're going to come back over here and we're going to paste this part. Then we're going to move on. This example that I'm showing you guys in this video, I'm not going to go through the contract details. I'm just going to go over how to fill out the contract. So in another video, I will go into details section by section to what everything means. But for purposes of this video, this is just how to fill out an as-is contract to a property without an association. So we're going to go here to the purchase price. The seller is asking for $240,000. I just want to cross-reference that. My buyer is okay with offering them $240,000. Ooh, not 2.4. 1 0 too many. All right, so $240,000. We are going to be putting, in our example, we're going to be putting $2,500 in escrow. Now, the escrow deposit is just a promise to purchase the property. So this is a good faith estimate is what it's really called. In our case, we're going to only do $2,500 now and probably another $2,500 within a few days after the inspection period is over. The reason why we do this is to assure the seller that we're serious about purchasing the property. If anything was to happen, and again, in this video, I'm not going to go into those types of details, the seller is entitled to keep the deposit. The only time the buyer is entitled to get his deposit returned is with a few instances, which I will do a whole nother video about in greater detail. But for purposes of our example, that's what we're going to do. Necessarily, the escrow amount can be any amount that you and your client decide is okay. In this case, I've decided that, my client and I have decided this is an okay escrow deposit amount. Again, in your case, you will speak with your client and you guys will come up with a number that you guys feel comfortable with to give as an escrow deposit, which would be a good faith deposit. My next step is to put in how long it's going to be before we put in our deposit into escrow. I like to always put this. Again, this is something that you and your client have to discuss. How is that escrow deposit going to go in? And it also has a lot to do with what the seller wants. The seller may want the offer to go hand in hand with the deposit into escrow. If you don't have an escrow deposit, you have no contract. It is not binding. There's nothing holding anybody back. So make sure that your clients understand the difference. Submitting an offer with money accompanied and submitting an offer where you're going to put the money within 3 days. I like to do this one, and that's what we're going to be doing today. The name of the title company that we're going to be working with is a lawyer that I love to work with because she is amazing, and she is not sponsoring this video by no means, but I love to work with her because she actually takes the time to explain things to my clients the day of closing. I don't have nothing to worry about. All her fees are reasonable, and I'd rather have lawyer representation when I'm working with a client and make sure that if something was to happen in between the transaction, that she's taking care of it and not charging any extra fees only the fees that she charges, for her closing costs. I know there's a lot of companies out there that do title work, and I respect you guys, love you guys. I've worked with some of you guys in the past. Some of my clients wish to work with those title companies. I personally prefer to work with an attorney because I feel that my client's more protected. Again, the option is up to your client. Sometimes the sellers may want to persuade you to use the company that they want you to work with, that they want you to work with them. And, again, this is something that's up for debate. I rather work with my attorney, and that's why I always put it in my contracts in the initial offer that I submit. These things can change based on what seller you're working with. Some sellers may want to work in their title house. They don't want to work with anybody else, and that's fine. It's just whatever you guys feel comfortable with. Purposes of our example today, I'm going to put in the attorney's information. And this is where escrow is going to be held. So within 3 days of our contract being accepted, or our offer being accepted, your client or my client has to go and do a wire transfer for the amount of $2,500. If not, we do not have a binding contract, and we wasted all of our time doing this video and showing you guys how to get this done. All right, so let me see. Coral Gables, Florida, 33134. All right, the phone number is very important because if a seller needs to get a hold of the title company for whatever reason, you want to make sure that everything is written out in your contract so they don't start calling you and asking you a million questions. They can just reference the contract. Besides, this is a legally binding contract, so you should want to have everything in writing as clearly as possible. So in the event that anything comes up later on, everything was here and everybody was in agreement to the procedures of the transaction. Sorry, today I'm stuck. Alrighty, so in my case, I want to add an extra security deposit within the next, after inspection. So we're gonna say in the next 10 days. Sorry, 10 days. We're gonna do another $2,500. In this part where it says financing expressed as dollar amount, we want to put what type of financing it is. In my client's case, he's going to be doing a conventional financing at 5% down. So here we're going to put 95% because he is financing 95% of his loan. Automatically, this number is going to change, and it's going to let the seller know that at closing, the client has to come up with $7,000. That's not counting any closing costs, any lawyer fees, any doc stamps, anything that has to do with the closing cost. That's not what this number represents. What this number represents is how much money the buyer has to come to the closing table with as far as part of his down payments. And he's missing, because he already has $2,500 and another $2,500 in escrow. That's $5,000 that he already has on his side as credit. So the difference between the $5,000 he has in escrow and the down payment that the bank requires is $7,000. So that's what the purposes of that is. So our next line is time for acceptance for this offer. I like to give sellers the option about a day or two to make a decision and get back to me. In today's market, we're dealing with a market where everybody's buying, and realtors are really not being diligent about the way they are doing things. They're showing properties and collecting offers, and, that I know of. There's a due diligence to present order offers in a timely manner. Holding offers, really, I don't believe it's part of the due diligence rules, and I think it's very unethical, but that is just my opinion, and unfortunately, I am not in control of what agents do in this real estate market. So, I can only put it in writing and cross my fingers that I'm dealing with an ethical agent that's going to understand the rules, the way that it works. So, purposes of our example, after my little rant there, I'm going to say that I want to hear from the seller's agent by February 12th. If by February 12th I don't have an answer from the seller's agent, then we can move on to the next property, because, we're not obligated to do anything under this contract. It's not binding. They didn't sign it, and we're free to move forward. I want to put here a closing date. So when it comes to closing dates, I like to give my mortgage lender probably anywhere from 30 to 45 days to close a loan. The longer time you put here, the less appealing it looks to a seller. Seller like a quick closing. So it's very important that you have a good relationship with your mortgage lender. And I'm just going to say a little plug into my video. I am a mortgage lender as well, along with a real estate broker. So I can do loans. And if you have any clients that want to pre-qualify with me, just go ahead and hit me up down in the comments below, and I'll be happy to help you guys. But in any event, when you're working with a mortgage lender, it's very important that they understand the timeline, because mortgage lenders have a lot of work on their hands and they may slack, they may not submit loans on time, and this can affect your closing date. It can affect the deposit your clients are putting in, and it can affect you getting an extension from a seller. Some sellers don't want to give extensions and it becomes really difficult. But that's not here nor there. So in the case of this offer that I'm going to be submitting, I'm going to say that after February 12th, I want to close 30 days later. So we're going to go here and we're going to say 30 days from now is March 12th. But there's a problem. It ends on a Friday. I don't like to close on Fridays because if something happens with the bank and they need a document or something goes wrong and we cannot meet the deadline of Friday by 5 o'clock to close, the issue is that then it'll go on to the next day. And guess what? Saturday or Sunday, banks don't open. They're not, well, being some banks open, I shouldn't say that, but banks are closed as far as lending goes. So there will be no funding over the weekend. Most title agencies are not open on the weekend. So what happens? You got to roll it over to Monday. So I prefer to give myself a few extra days after initially 30 days to close with peace and quiet, because sometimes lenders get backed up with this whole COVID thing that's going on. Lenders also are very backed up. Banks are. So processing loans and getting them approved is taking a little longer than usual. So I just want to be on the safe side. And I'm going to say, you know what? I want to close on March 17th. I'm going to give myself 3 days. So March 17th is going to be my date for closing. Again, these dates will vary from client to client. Some clients need to close 60 days later. Some clients need to close 45 days later. This dates of closing will all vary. This is a standard as is contract, and this is the way that I'm going to be writing it. Purposes of this example, we're only going to do a few days after the 30-day mark. We're going to move on. We can skip everything until we get, actually we can't. We're going to do number 7, may not assign the contract. I like to always have that selected because if a buyer wants to change who is the person purchasing the contract, he's going to have to do it with an addendum. And everybody has to be aware of it and everybody has to approve it. I have my reservations on why I do this, and I may go into a whole nother video at another time explaining why I put may assign contract in my contracts, because I just personally have something against wholesalers. So giving that said, I'm not going into more details about that in this video, but I will be in another video. So for purposes here, I like to select may not assign this contract. Next, we're going to go to financing. Now, depending on the type of client that you have, you're either going to say that the client is purchasing it all cash or that the client is purchasing via financing. My client, as I mentioned before, is a conventional buyer. So he is financing. So we're going to click here. This is for all the financing people out there. Make sure you have selected B. These are very important rules to understand. We want to make sure that we're clicking the correct type of financing here, because if something happens in your client's financing and the mortgage lender says, hey, you know what, your client didn't qualify, you got to, annul and void this contract. If we have selected FHA and the client really was doing a qualification for conventional and the mortgage lender sends you a letter saying that he didn't qualify for conventional, guess what? You're still on the hook for FHA. And then you violated the contract because you were supposed to do an FHA loan, not a conventional loan. So it's very important that you have this selected correctly. If things change throughout the contract, then you do an addendum and you write this out. So I know a lot of realtors out there doing bait and switches just to get their contracts in. But let me tell you, your client's deposit is on the line. And at the end of the day, us as realtors, we're liable for people's deposits because this is people's lives. And it's very, very important that we keep their deposit safe. You're representing the buyer. You're going to keep you're supposed to keep their deposit safe. So guys, read what your clients are signing. These are binding contracts. Can't stipulate that enough. So we're going to move on. So we're going to say here conventional because my client is pre-approved for a conventional loan. We're going to move on. And right here, it talks about a loan approval period. This again is going to vary from lender to lender. I like to put 21 days because I want my contract to look strong. However, 21 days is a very, very aggressive date when you're dealing with a lender. Make sure that once this contract is executed, the lender understands that 21 days from the effective date, there needs to be a loan commitment letter issue. Guys, I cannot stress this enough. Your client's deposit will be on the line if by the 21st day of an executed contract, there is no loan commitment approval letter from the lender. If you see that day 19 is approaching and your lender's not answering your phone, which is very, very possible, if you see that it's day 19 or 20 and you have no answer from the lender as far as when you're going to get an approval, my advice is to reach out to the selling agent and let them know that you as of yet don't have this approval and that you need an extension. Because if it passes the 21 days and the lender approval isn't in, that seller's agent is entitled to keep your deposit. And you do not want that. So be very, very careful how many days you put here. If you leave it blank, read where it says 30 days. Now, I want to express to you guys that a lender approval letter, which is considered a loan approval period, is not the same as the closing date. So get this very, very, very clear. Always make sure you have this in your calendar, set yourself reminders, because this is one of the most, I would say, the most unnoticed details in a contract, where a lot of people have gotten their deposits taken from them because for some reason or the other, the agent doesn't know about this, forgot about it, and now the seller's agent is saying, well, hey, you didn't close in time, you didn't give me this document in time, and now that we have no deal, because something can happen in financing where the deal can fall apart. But hey, you know what? You made me waste my time. I'm keeping your deposit. And this is just a loophole around that. So guys, be very, very careful what number you put here. I'm going to put 21 days. And in this particular case, I am not the lender. I'm not representing the borrower. And I'm not representing the client as the lender. I'm only representing the client as his realtor. So I'm going to make sure that the lender that's working this file understands that I need this letter within 21 days. And it's days. It's not business days. It is calendar days. Okay, we're going to move on. In this case, my client has a fixed interest rate. Everything else I kind of leave blank because it's really up to financing. And I don't know what interest rate he's going to get. And I don't know if he's going to do 30 or 15 years or 25 years. That's up to them. So I leave that part blank. Buyers should make the loan application for financing within 5 days. I like to fill that one in and put 5. Basically, this has to do with lending. So your client has to have this application in within 5 days. The most important part here when we're talking about financing in this contract is we want to make sure that the contract is contingent upon the buyer obtaining a conventional loan. He's not getting any other type of loan. He's getting a conventional loan. And within 21 days, we need a loan approval from the lender. Guys, this is important. Keep on top of those lenders. They will act slick about it and days will pass and your client's deposit will be at risk. I've been in scenarios where this can be the case and I'm trying to save you guys from the headache. We're just going to move on now. All of this is stuff, like I said, I will go into details in a different video about what each section means. Purposes of this video, we're just going to fill in what I like to do. In this case, I picked the title company, and so I'm going to pick option 3. I didn't pick option 1 or option 2 because in this case, the seller is not designating the title agent. And he's not going to pay for owner's policy. At least we don't think so as of yet because we don't have an executed contract. So he may come back and say, hey, you know what? I want to work with my title people and I'm going to pay for the owner's titles policy. So that would be the reason why this would be checked, but we don't know that yet. So in this case as well, the buyer is not designating the closing agent because the buyer doesn't want to pay for owner's titles policy. So in order to protect both buyer and sellers from it being a ridiculous amount of money when it comes to the owner's titles policy, and I can get into details about what an owner's titles policy is in a whole nother video, we're going to pick this option. This saves everybody money. Again, the seller will be the one to make the changes if he has an issue with it, but for purposes of our example, we're going to pick this one. We're going to move on. Under home warranty, I always put NA. because in this case there is no home warranty plan. If there was, then you would change, whatever option that is. So, but that's in this case. We're going to move on. This is not a condo, so special assessment can stay blank. There is no condo association, so there will be no, or a homeowners association either. I should say there's no associations, what I should say for better explanation. So neither one of these boxes need to be checked. When we do a contract for a condo, we will go into a whole nother explanation as to what this means, but we're going to move on. I don't really fill in anything else. We're going to move on. My favorite part of the contract. Inspection period. Inspection period is really important because around the inspection period is that your client has the option to move on with the contract or cancel the contract without losing his or her deposit, I should say. I like to put on here 7 days. Some people like to put more, some people like to put less. I like to start with 7. If the seller has an issue, we can go back and forth about the inspection period time. But I want my client to have 7 full days to decide what they want to do. Now, a very important secret, well, it's not a secret, but it's a very important tip, I should say. When you're working with inspection periods, understand that you have the obligation to say something, which is demands of what you want fixed, if you want to stay, if you want the owner to give you credit for something. You have until 5 p.m. of the last day of inspection to do so. And what I mean by that, the days start to count as the day of the effective date. So let's say that everything goes well and everything gets signed today with a date of February 10th. That means that from February 10th all the way to February 17th at 5 p.m., if it's a business day, I have the time frame to say something. So if my client does an inspection and the lights fixtures are broken, or if there's an issue with the AC, or if there's a leak in the roof that wasn't disclosed by the seller, my client can ask either for a credit to be fixed to be given to them at closing, or they can ask that the seller take care of those issues. Whatever the case may be, you have to say something at 5 p.m. on the last business day. Very, very important. If it goes past 5 p.m. on the 7th day, then you fall into issues where your client may not get their deposit back if they want to walk away from the contract, because technically the contract at some point will say that everything is done end of business day, 5 p.m. And again, I'll get into more details about those requirements in another video. So in this case, we're going to say 7-day inspection period. We're going to move on because there's nothing else for us to fill in here. There's nothing else for us to fill in. Nothing else for us to fill in. This is all just jargon that the client should be very well aware of when they're signing these contracts. These are legally binding contracts, guys. This isn't a joke. So we will get, like I said, into another video that I will link below at another time. I'll link it below when I have it uploaded. And I will get into detail by detail about what is going on with these contracts as far as where you're supposed to fill in. All right, so remember I talked about lead-based paint 1978. I was right the first time. It was not 1976. Any property that was built before 1978 needs a lead-based paint disclosure. So we're going to click on that. And I just want to cross-reference to show you guys that this house was built in 1958. So it needs to have that disclosure attached to this. We're going to move on. My office charges a $395 compliance fee. So we're going to put buyer agrees. Again, each office is different. Your office may not have a compliance fee. Your office may charge more for a compliance fee. I charge my clients and my office, I tell my agents that they have to charge their client the same fees. So buyer agrees to pay Unicasa. I was going back to my old company. Buyer agrees to pay Pimienta Realty LLC a compliance fee of $395 at closing. Make sure you have this here, because if not, you got to go back and get it initialed by everybody and all this other stuff. So we're going to move on. And then we're going to add here our information. So in this case, I'm the cooperating agent. So I'm going to put my name, Gabriela Pimienta. And in this case, we got to find out how much the seller's paying for commission. So we're going to go back to our MLS and we're going to go down to office agent information, and under buyer agent compensation, we want to go to transaction broker compensation, which is what this means. And they're paying 3%, right? So we're going to come back over here and we want to make sure that we add 3%. My company name is Pimienta Realty LLC. And then we want to also fill this in for the listing agent. So we're going to come back over here and we're going to see who is the listing agent. The listing agent here is Andres Canu. So we're going to write his name over here. Andres Canu. We're going to do the same thing because he's also getting 3%. And he is with, let's go back. And how we know he's 3% because we can see here is transaction broker or buyer's agent compensation is 3 and 3. Just put 3. He is with Canvas Real Estate. So we're going to come back over here and we're going to type in Canvas Real Estate. Excellent. Then we're going to go down and this is it, guys. This is 12 of 12. We have filled in our entire contract as we should. Those were just the important parts. I know I went off a little bit on certain areas because I find them very important and I want you guys to understand what's important when you're filling in these contracts. Again, I will have a whole nother video section by section of what this contract really entails and how important it is that your client understands what they're signing. But for purposes of just filling out an as-is contract to a single family residence without an association, this is how we do it. Now we're going to go to save. And it's going to give me this, right? So we're going to say this is a new transaction. We're going to come back over here and we're going to copy and paste the address because I like to save my files under the property address. You can type it in. You can do whatever you want. I like to just copy paste. We're going to say we're going to click same as property address because that's going to be our transaction name. We're going to say the property type is a single family residence, so it's residential. And we're going to say it's a purchase. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to say save form. And it should have saved. So let's click on this. Let's try. I just want to make sure it's saved. Should be saved. Oh, there it is. Now it's saved. You got to wait for that pop-up box to leave the screen. So it is saved. So we're going to click close. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves our 1978 lead-based paint addendum because like I told you guys, this property was built in 1953, so we need to give that disclosure. I'm not going into details to what that means because that will be a whole nother video for it. So I like to type in here lead base and press enter, and here it is. And basically, we can either save this document under the property address that we recently saved, and everything should be popped up automatically, or we can type in things by hand. I want to show you guys how it looks, so I'm going to go ahead and do it all manually. We're going to go back to this imap page that we were on. We're going to copy and paste the seller's name right here. Our buyer's name is James Jones. And our property address is going to be, I just like to copy and paste. I don't like to go back and type it out, so just makes it easier. If you have double screens, it's such an easier way. I'm working on my laptop, so you'll see me go back and forth a lot. I like to have a clean contract, so we want to have everything in one line. And this concludes, actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, this right here, yeah, I'm not done yet, sorry. We want to make sure that we know the difference between receives a 10-day opportunity and waive the opportunity to conduct a risk assessment or inspection of the present lead-based paint hazards. I like to obviously talk to my client, explain to my client what lead-based paint means. Again, I will go into details with that in another video. In this case, I would like to put received a 10-day copy, 10-day opportunity to conduct a risk management Also understand where it says buyer has received copies of all the information listed. Buyer has received a pamphlet, protect your home from lead in your home. All of these information is going to be in our form Simplicity. You can find it. I will go into a whole nother video at another time where you can find that, how you can download it, and when you can say it and send it to your client. In this particular case, I already have all those documents saved. I have already sent it to my client. He's already reviewed it. And at no time has he told me he wants to waive the opportunity to conduct an inspection for lead-based paint. So in this case, I'm going to click received. He's receiving a 10-day opportunity to do this, and he's going to read those pamphlets that I sent him so he understands what the risks are when it comes to lead-based paint in a home. So at this point, we are done with our contract for single family home built before 1978, and in a community where in a neighborhood where there's no association. So this is all you're going to need. We're going to save it. We're going to go to an existing transaction. Remember, we just saved it. We're going to save it. And we're going to wait for that to pop off of the screen to know that it's fully saved. And that should be it, guys. My next video is going to be on how to send this contract to your client via e-sign. That will be a whole nother email, a whole nother video. And in the meantime, if you want to learn how to do that, you can go to another video that I have here where I talk about doing searches. And in there, I believe I have the link, not the link, I'm sorry, the instructions on how to do e-sign. So guys, I hope you enjoyed my video. Please subscribe. Hit the notification button so you can get notified every single time you get I upload a video. And until next time, I will see you. Bye.